Alright, so as you can see, like promised, I had an ice bath in this sink, and that is our malt base for the cider. If you take a look at the temperature, we're at 81 degrees right now, which is perfect considering we're going to add it to some room temperature. So I'd say 70-ish degree apple juice. That'll bring it down a little bit further as well. What I have is a sanitized bucket right here. I dumped it out with all the sanitizer. In that tubing there is half-inch siphon tubing that I've also sanitized. That you can see the siphon right here. The reason I have that is because if you look in the middle of that, there's a globular mass of this nasty protein-looking stuff that, as the beer as the malt base cools down, you get that coagulation of proteins called the cold break. We want to avoid as much of that as possible, so I'm going to siphon around it. So I'm going to just do this. I don't know if I can do it with one hand. One, and done. And don't mind the terrible camera work right here. We're trying to siphon this here. Don't mind this. There we go. So, siphon started poorly, but it started. Sorry about the terrible camera work there. It's kind of hard to manage that. So, I'm just moving the siphon around, attempting to avoid as much of the protein as possible. Actually, failing miserably at it, but it doesn't really matter. So this is going in here. Once we're done, we'll add our apple juice. I might not even do all of this. I'm going to watch the side here. Take a look and see our... Oh, we're almost done. Looks like we are done. Great. So I got everything that I'm going to get out of that malt base. Doing this one-handed, so don't mind my shakiness. Pull that tubing out. So we have the malt base in our sanitized bucket. Put that in the sink for now. Okay, now it's time to crack open the apple juice. So we're going to go 1 gallon at a time here. See if I can do this with one hand so I can actually film it decently. Boom. So we're going to go 1 and... Now it's okay to let it splash because you're going to introduce oxygen into the mix, which helps fuel the yeast. So we're going to just let it splash all the way in there. There's 1 gallon down. We're going to do that 3 more times and then we'll be good to go. It's harder to do one-handed than you'd imagine. So you guys get this really dumb close-up of my apple juice. I mean, splashing's fine, but you don't want to lose it, so you can, once it gets deeper in there, it's more likely to just splash out. So you do want to avoid that, obviously, because if you don't avoid that, then that presents a problem. I'm going to just preemptively do this cap here. Alright. 1 more to go. Oh, 2 more to go. So, you can use any brand of apple juice you want. I use Mott's because it comes in the 1 gallon containers and it's easy enough to purchase at BJ's. But pretty much any brand that you choose is fine. You just want to make sure that it's as, you don't want any sugar added. You want it as natural as it can come. Just to make sure that you get your yeast working properly. You want to give them as much natural fuel as you can. So there we go. That's our cider. We're gonna check the temperature just for consistency's sake. You can see my microphone wire digging there. I'm gonna rinse it off just a little bit. Just rinse off our temperature probe here and see where we're at. So if you take a look, we're at 75, 76 degrees, which is 77. That's actually perfect. Anything under 80 is great. So we'll take this probe out and call it a day. Now, when you want to seal this fermenter, I do a couple things. Obviously, we got to put the yeast in first, but I do a couple different things. I'll take some people use airlocks for their fermenter lids. I actually use something called a blow-off tube, which I'll show you in just a second. We have our ale yeast here, and we're just gonna sprinkle it right on top, just like that. Now, this is the part where we don't want to introduce anything new, so we're going to put the lid on real quick. Have it in the bathroom from where I dumped out the sanitizer. So, this tube right here is a 3/8 bit of tubing. It's going to go into this grommet on the lid, and the other end is going to go into this bucket full of sanitizer. So, I'm going to bring this lid in here so we can do this as cleanly as possible. Don't want to do it in the bathroom. So, first thing that's going to happen, lid's going to go on. A little bit of sanitizer got in there, but that's okay. And I'm not going to seal it until I actually get the tubing in. So, I'm going to kind of finagle it in there. It's a tight fit, but that's what you want because you want it airtight. So, tubing is now in there. So we have our free end of the tubing, which we're going to just kind of leave dangling for a second while we go back and get the sanitizer. So I'm going to do this again in the basement, but what you want to do is you want to put your lid on there, seal it. I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to show you the next step. And then create a closed system. So you have your tube coming out here, circling around, and the free end is going to go into this thing of sanitizer. So the liquid creates a barrier, so making a closed system. CO2 can escape here as part of it's a byproduct of the fermentation process. CO2 escapes here, and oxygen cannot back up into your system. So you won't oxygenate your cider at any point. And you'll see, once you put your yeast in, like I've done, probably by tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, we'll have a lot of bubbling coming through here, which is the CO2 escaping. That's the beer or the cider fermenting. So that's that. Hopefully this video has been at least somewhat entertaining, and hopefully this is something that you will choose to experiment with in the future. Have a good one. Bye-bye.